topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Elise Cortez.
Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program. Thanks for tuning in this week. Great to have you. This show has been on air since February of 2015. It is a pride and joy of mine. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. If we have not met before and you don't know me, I'm a management consultant, organizational logotherapist, speaker, and author. My team and I at Gusto now help companies to enliven and fortify their operations by articulating their purpose and building inspirational leaders and cultures activated by meaning and purpose to turn those companies from a flatline EKG to a vibrant destination workplace. There, people are intrinsically motivated to perform at their best, grow into their fuller potential, and are committed to stay and dynamically deliver on the company's mission. You can learn more about us and how we can work together at elisecortez.com and gusto-now.com. Now, getting to today's program, with us, we have William Vanderbloemen, who has been leading the Vanderbloemen Search Group for 15 years, where they are regularly retained to identify the best talent for teams, manage succession planning, and consult on all issues regarding teams. This year, Vanderbloemen will complete their 3,000th executive search. Prior to his search career, William served as a senior pastor at one of the largest Presbyterian churches in the United States. He is the author of Be the Unicorn, 12 Data-Driven Habits That Separate the Best Leaders from the Rest, which we'll be talking about today on the program. He joins us today from Houston. William, welcome to Working on Purpose.
Thanks, Elise. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. And let's just celebrate this gorgeous thing you brought into the world. Look at this. Oh, it's just every time, William, every time I get a new book, and it's every week I read a book. It's always amazing to me, I know what it takes to bring a book into the world. And I will tell you this, my friend, this is harder to bring into the world than a child. I've done both. Okay.
So I'm quoting you forever now.
Absolutely. I
tell people, say, why'd you write the book? And I say, well, it's not because I wanted to.
Right.
It's not. It's not fun. You won't make money unless your last name is Rowling.
Right.
We have 7 children. So I have been, and I tell people this all the time. So now I can actually quote you. I've been in the labor and delivery suite many, many, many times. I have not given birth to a child. I do not know what it's like to give birth to a child. I'm not saying anything or minimizing giving birth to a child, but man, getting a book out of you feels like what it looks like my wife has gone through.
No, that's a great way to say it, William. That is a great way to say it. I'm going to quote you on that. Okay. Well, I have to tell you, it's a miracle to bring a child into the world. I'll just say that. So I have to tell you, you won't know this because you wouldn't know this about my background, but one of the things I really appreciate about what you've done in your book is where you drew your analysis from, because I started my career in human capital 25 years ago in recruiting. So I want to start by saying that you do have a very unique vantage point on which to be able to understand these and discern these 12 habits. So I just want to celebrate that first.
Thank you. Sometimes the expert is not the smartest person. It's just the one with the most repetitions.
Yeah. No, but you have a really, really interesting, bird's eye view on this, especially because of the kinds of people you recruit for organizations that you search for. So again, as you say, you're not staffing all positions. You've been asked to get the next superstar. So that's just huge. So anyway, really, I'm envious that you have such a great data set. So we won't have time to get into all 12 of the habits. And besides all that, ladies and gentlemen, we want you to get the book anyway. So we're going to talk about a few of them that I think are really pretty interesting and really add to what this show's curated content really has already provided in the 9 years we had on air. So I want to start with the notion that you talk in your book, and I love the way that you've laid it out. It's so crisp and well organized. But you talk about the habits, and then you talk about why hiring managers favor them, and then you talk about how we can cultivate them in ourselves, which I just think is wonderful. So the first habit that I want to talk about is this idea of the fast. And so that's not really something we hear a lot about, being fast as a distinguishing habit. So bring that to life for us a little bit, if you would.
Yeah. Well, is it okay if I give a little backstory?
Please. Yeah.
Okay. So this started as a selfish research project. I wanted to figure out how to spot top talent quickly. So during the pandemic, we had a shutdown, right? And everybody had a little time on their hands. And we realized we've now done 30,000 top interviews. We've done more than that in interviews, but the last best of the best, we've done 30,000 of those. And so we asked the question, like, of the best of those, do these people have anything in common? And that was the question that sort of led to a selfish study of figuring, if I can spot these people quicker, I'll be a better search consultant, clients will be happier, everything goes faster and better. A surprise happened on the way. We studied what these people had in common, and it was absolutely consistent and an absolute surprise. I think it would be IQ of 160. They all have that. No. I thought, well, maybe they all got to go to great schools and have a pedigree and a network and, Ivy League, that sort of thing. Nope. That wasn't it either. It wasn't even as mundane as they all had fabulous hair, which I'm jealous of, or that they were the quarterback or the head cheerleader or whatever the thing. It wasn't any of those sort of outward appearance or inborn things. It wasn't even traits that they had. What they had in common were habits, things that they do, particularly as it relates to how humans treat other humans. And these habits that came out are absolutely coachable.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Developable. I love that. Yes.
Absolutely. It's training. It's a development plan. And when I realized, oh my gosh, we're not just able to spot a unicorn now, I'm able to teach you how to become one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then it was like, I think we got to write a book. So and so each, there's an intro chapter and then maybe another one, but then you get to 12 chapters on these 12 habits, right? The very first one is the fast. And I get asked about this a lot. I'm not entirely sure why that ended up being the first one. I do know that it's the easiest one to tweak in your life to make you stand out in a crowd. So what do you mean, William? I'm not fast. Elise, I'm not fast either. I'm Dutch. We're not built for speed. We're built for wind resistance. So
so great.
So it's not speed, it's responsiveness. And I probably could have said responsiveness, but that wouldn't have led to fun questions like this one. So fast does not mean I ran a 4.340 at the combine. Fast does not mean, I can juggle and do all that. Fast just means I get back to people. And it turns out these unicorns, the best of the best we've ever interviewed, are almost compulsively driven to get back to people. And then when you look a layer beneath that and say, well, what about everybody else? We're all pretty horrible at it.
Yes, agreed.
I mean, just
myself included. Yes.
Oh, I fail all the time at it. But like we went past our candidates. We went to, we surveyed all 30,000 of our unicorns. We also surveyed 250,000 people that are just, random sample size sort of thing. And what was so interesting is people graded themselves of the 250,000, the non-unicorns, the rest of us, the normal people. We surveyed the 250,000 and in a very long survey asked them, would you grade yourself above average, below average, average at these following things? Are you above average or not at getting back to people? And the overwhelming answer was, oh, yes. Okay, great. The average response time for people to take the survey we sent them, so it was about 6 days. We called the people at SurveyMonkey that we had hired out to help us run this thing. So what's the average response time? They're like, most of your good responses are going to come in the first 3 to 4 days. So what does that tell you? People that were grading themselves above average are below average. So we're not good at getting back to people. We talked to at least this, I'm going to date myself here, but do you remember eHarmony?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's kind of the OG. It's before we were ever swiping right or left. It's
Right.
the beginning. And we said, so when your software sends one of your subscribers hey, we may have found a potential match, how's the response time? It's terrible. And think about that for a minute. A site like eHarmony, fabulous outlet for people that are trying to find someone to spend their life with, right? And theoretically, everyone in that database is motivated to try and find someone that they can spend their life with. And then when you get a prospect, you wait forever to write back.
Right.
We
And
saw it in
what's that
sales and
message?
marketing, and I can bore you with all kinds of studies,
Yeah,
but the reality is the unicorns are almost scary how driven they are to get back to people quickly, and the rest of us are not. And if it is the first chapter, and it is the easiest tweak.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the easiest one. If you will start getting back to people, you will rise to the top, whether it's in dating or parenting or business or what have you. So yeah, and we can talk in great detail about that or not, depending on what helps you and the listeners today.
Well, thank you. What I would love to do is get through like a good, like 3 or 4 of these. So let's not go super in detail. But what I do want to do, because what I love about hosting the show is I like it to be one part educational, one part inspirational. So to be able to walk away putting this stuff to work. So one of the other tips that you put in your book on learning how to cultivate the fast was to make incentives for faster responses. So encourage your people to respond more quickly. And so that, you see lots of times that there's a service level agreement of respond within 24 hours or whatever it is. Maybe it's something else, but I like that idea too. And then you also say to set quick, achievable deadlines. And then you also, this cracked me up. You said no one needs a month to make their benefits elections. No, they do not. So just little things like that. I think that just really gives some guardrails for people to figure out, how do I become more fast?
Well, and I'm still learning it. I remember I was a lifetime ago, I was a pastor, long time ago. I was a very, very young senior pastor of a church. I was called in to help them with a relocation they were doing. And we were looking for a new place to meet on Sundays until our building was built. Okay. And I'm with one of the board members, and we're riding around and driving down the road by the new property. He said, that YMCA just down the road, that they don't use that on Sundays. I'm like, really? He said, yeah, I actually know the board chair. I'm like, cool. And so we get back to my office. He's dropping me off from lunch, comes in, and here's the number for the board chair. Okay. And then we sit and talk for a little bit. And he looks at me and says, why haven't you called him yet? And I said, Todd, I'm sitting here with you. He said, William, I want to have a place to meet on Sunday. Listen, let me tell you something. The first chance you get to respond to people is almost always the best chance you're going to get. And
I will
drilled into me.
I love that. And I will tell you, as a result of reading your book, I am also, which has been, I guess I finished it a few days ago. I'm doing that thanks to you. You're teaching me already. So I'm coachable, William. I'm coachable.
I am.
All right. Well, let's talk about this next one here before we have to grab our first break. The next one that I want to talk about, which we do talk about in the show quite a bit, and that's authenticity. But I liked the way that you distinguished some of the benefits of authenticity. So first, if you could talk about how this is such a unicorn habit. Why?
Yeah. Well, I think, I work with a lot of people who spend time in front of a microphone, whether it's a CEO that does meetings or a college president that's fundraising or a pastor or whatever it is. And it's amazing to me how rare it is to find someone who's the same on stage as they are backstage.
Hmm.
And that doesn't mean authenticity does not mean always telling all of the story in painful detail that's
Right.
awkward and makes people go, oh my gosh,
Right.
you didn't need to share all that. That's
Thank
not
you.
authentic.
Yes. Thank you.
Authentic
Yes.
is, are you the same in the daylight as you are in the dark? And the unicorns are the ones who do this. Most of us do not. This one scares me a little bit, at least, because there is no privacy anymore.
I understand. Yeah.
I mean, how many times have you been talking about a car with your phone in your pocket, and then your social media feed has the car ad coming up. Like,
right.
so
All the time.
There is no hiding anymore. And when we do a search for a candidate, we can do a social media history scrub to see how they're doing. I remember a dear friend of mine whose son was graduating from college, and she's like, he's getting ready to enter the job market. So I kind of watched him on Facebook. This was years ago, and he's a senior at college. Great guy, but he had a big college experience, and his profile picture on his Facebook was him in a toga with the Caesar wreath, the whole, fraternity, everything. The day after he graduated, he changed his picture to him walking somewhere like in Haiti with an orphan holding his hand.
Interesting.
We'll switch. So, and I get why he did it, but I think cultivating an authenticity that runs a little deeper is going to help you stand out.
Yeah. And I also liked that, you also talked about it, that when we're authentic, it really helps build confidence and trust. And this is such a very important phrase today, psychological safety.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can I give you a life hack that's not in the book on authenticity?
Can I keep it to myself, or do I have to share it with everybody who's listening? Okay, go for it.
So have you ever sat with someone in a conversation, and at the end of the conversation, you're sitting there saying, they made me feel like I was the only person in the room?
Yeah. Yeah.
Most of the time that's happened, it's either my wife, when, particularly when you're first in a relationship and you're all, puppy, but surprisingly, the other times it's happened are with the most successful people I've ever met. And it's because they're unicorns. And there's something they're doing, and they're listening to me, that breeds authenticity, trust. And I've tried and there are a lot of different ways, but here's one life hack that can help everyone here today. Okay. Look people in the eye when you talk to them. Oh, William, that's easy. Why am I tuning into this radio show? That's silly. No. People don't do it. Particularly Gen Z and millennials.
Yeah.
My kids who FaceTime us all the time from college, they FaceTime, and I don't know why they FaceTime, because I'm looking at their nose. They're looking up. They're doing something else. It's not normal for people to look people in the eye. And even when they do, people are rarely looking someone else in the eye. What do I mean? One of our eyes is the one we see with. The other one gives you peripheral vision. So you're really only looking out of one of your eyes.
I have noticed this in myself, and I didn't know that was actually true. Thank you for saying that right there.
True. And here's the life hack. 90% of all humans are right eye dominant. So that means you have a 9 in 10 chance of getting it right. When you're talking to the next person you're talking to, look dead in their right eye, and they will walk away saying, he made me feel special. She made me feel like I was in. I trust her. I believe him. He's authentic. So a little life hack that we learned on the way that's not in the book. So freebie for everybody.
Bonus for coming into the show. Okay, on that note, let's let them think about that while we grab our first break. I am your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We've been on the air with William Vanderbloemen, who has been leading the Vanderbloemen Search Group for 15 years, where they are regularly retained to identify the best talent for teams, manage succession planning, and consult on all issues regarding teams. We've been talking about a couple of the data-driven habits from his book. After the break, we're going to hit a couple more. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at EliseCortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. As I too am dedicated to helping to create a world where people realize their potential at work and are led by inspirational leaders that help them find and contribute their greatness. And we do business that betters the world. I also keep writing books, so I know the birthing experience. My last one came out in March of 2023, and it's called The Great Revitalization: How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business. I wrote it for leaders to help them understand the lay of today's land, of what it takes to be able to attract and keep the best talent who want meaning and purpose. And then I provide 22 best practices to help them develop that in their culture. If you are just joining us, my guest is William Vanderbloemen. He is the author of Be the Unicorn, 12 Data-Driven Habits That Separate the Best Leaders from the Rest, which we want to continue on here. Okay, so as I said, we can't give all of them to you, ladies and gentlemen, but I want to give you a few that have really stood out and that I thought were really crunchy for me. So the next one I definitely want to hit, William, is the one on agility. And you really got me with that opening agile fact you put in your book. I also love that you do that you have those facts for all of your habits as well. So do you want to share the agile fact, or do you want me to?
Well, you can share the fact and I'll share a personal learning. How's that?
Okay. So, as somebody who continues, this aging process goes on, the agile fact you have in your book that really struck me is you say, a physical therapist friend told me the other day about a continuing education class she'd taken over the weekend. It was on geriatric physical therapy. And she shared a sobering fact. Once a person is no longer able to get up off the floor on their own, their life expectancy is less than 5 years. Practice agility, my friends.
Yeah. And a couple of these habits we're better at when you're younger than as we get older. This is one of them. I noticed this personally years ago. Our seventh kid, who she was probably 10 years ago, she was just a toddler, and I'm a very slow jogger.
Yeah. I think
And
I remember this story from your book. Go ahead.
yeah, and I got to the place where I was starting to get injured, so I started trying to do stretching, and I'm pretty stiff. So the stretching was harder than the running, and I'm at home. I've done my 5-mile run. I'm stretching. I'm sweating like crazy, just trying to touch my toes. My daughter walks in, looks at me, sits down on the floor, ties herself into a human pretzel as only a little kid can, because babies bounce. They do. And then she stands up and looks at me and laughs and leaves the room. Not a word said. And
Message conveyed.
well, the youngest can get away with that, but it dawned on me, hey, William, every day you're alive, you get less flexible. Humans are never more flexible than the minute they come out of the womb. And that's agility and learning. It's like when you can teach a kid 2 languages at once until they're like 5 or 6 years old, and it does not confuse them one bit.
Right.
But when we get older and an iPad comes out and you say, but I like a legal pad, the flexibility is not what it used to be. So this is one that will get worse as you get older, but nobody's working on it. And if you will just put a little bit of work in, your agility will go up. And I promise you, your value in whatever arena you're living your life, whether that's as a parent or a student or an employer or an employee, it will go up. Think back, Elise, you're such an expert on workplace and purpose. I bet the people you talked to during the pandemic, when they talked about who they're keeping and who they have to let go of, the people they kept were the ones that showed a lot of agility, because we all had other duties as necessary. And let's figure out Zoom, and that was just a new gold standard for people. It's only going to continue. The advent of AI, which is already here and is not going away,
right,
is going to demand that people learn new ways of creating value. And those who work on that agility, which is hard, I can touch my toes now, but it took a long time. It's hard, but it will separate you from the field and is worth giving a shot.
I really appreciate that, and I think that is so, so, so true. You even talk about things like, don't add waste to projects. Don't waste time during meetings. Don't have meetings at all if you can possibly do it. But there's this idea of constantly thinking about how you get better at things and add more value that I really thought was critical and definitely wanted to be able to showcase for our listeners and our viewers. Just awesome.
It's as simple as take up a new habit,
Yeah.
a new hobby, learn to play the piano. I'm trying to learn tennis right now. My wife plays. Sooner or later, all these children will be grown. We need something to do together. So take on and try something new.
Well, and that's another one of the things I liked about what you had in your book is you offer a section on agility test, and you say that when you're interviewing a candidate and you want to find out how agile they are, you tend to ask a few questions, and one of them is, "What new hobby have you developed?" Which I
Yeah.
think is fantastic. The other one that I really thought was pretty interesting is asking them, "What part of history do you like studying the most?" That
Yes.
really, really was compelling to me. And you said why in the book. Do you want to say why here? Why do you ask that
Well, I can
question?
tell you why right now without trying to remember the quote in the book. You know, my sense is people who are drawn to seasons like the Renaissance, I would love to
Mm,
live in, or the dawn of the internet, or the printing press. People who are like, man, that must have been fun to be in an era where we just discovered a whole new part of the planet over here.
yeah. Yeah.
Those who lean toward that kind of thing are the kind of people who naturally are working on their agility.
Mm.
And I mean, I remember we were doing a chief communications officer search during the pandemic, big client, and they were worried about having communications that were omni-channel. Like, how do we do print media and TikTok, right? Like, so this person had to be able to think in a like polylingual sort of way. And when I was interviewing, and it's a very fast-moving, fast-growing client, so agility is a key. When I was interviewing one of the candidates, I said, "So, what you got any new hobbies? That's kind of interesting." And she said, "Yeah, I'm learning French." Well, this is
Mm.
Southern California, and I live in Texas. French is not a super helpful language in Southern California.
Right.
It's not in it is in Napa Valley, I guess, but not not in Texas and where this woman was. I said, "Oh, that's interesting. Why French? You think Spanish would be more helpful." She said, "Well, my daughter is a senior in high school, and I promised her a trip to France for her graduation. That's not going to happen. We're not going anywhere. We're certainly not going to Europe anytime soon. It'll be a year or two before travel comes up." So we thought, okay, why not? Why not make this fun? Why don't we both together learn French so that when we go to France, we can actually try speaking in French and have a full immersion experience? And I thought that you just passed the interview. That's
Mhm.
the agility that this particular client needs with this particular job.
Mhm. I love that. I think that's so great, so smart. It makes sense to me. And that actually, as somebody who does love to speak different languages, the richness of your experience is radically multiplied when you actually can converse in that country's language. It's amazing the difference.
100%.
So, okay. So, all right. So maybe that kind of leads us somewhat over to the next one that I wanted to talk about. Again, we're not talking about all of them, ladies and gentlemen, because you've got to read the book. It's awesome. But the next one that I want to talk about is the anticipator.
Yeah. Yeah. Who can think ahead? Who's thinking 2 or 3 shots ahead? Not to get all religious, but it's
As only you probably could.
well, it's just interesting to me. I grew up, I had this previous life as a pastor and still attend church and that sort of thing. But early on in my career, I thought Jesus was so nice to refer to people as sheep. They're fluffy. You count them to go to sleep. What a sweet thing. Until I actually got around a sheep. They're dirty. They're nasty. They end up in trouble primarily because they don't look up. They're always
Mm,
looking for the next tuft of grass, and their head is buried in what they think is right in front of them. And they end up walking off a cliff, and the shepherd has to go pull them out of a ditch. And they're their own author of bad things in their life because they don't look ahead. Now, oh, William, I can't see the future. You don't have to see the future. You just have to think 2 or 3 steps ahead. It's as simple as the old Covey 7 habits of
yeah.
highly effective people. Number
Yep.
1, begin with the end in mind. When Tiger Woods tees off on a golf hole, He is thinking about where the pin is on the green, even if it's going to take him 3 shots to get to the green, because he's going to place the first shot so that the second shot and the third shot makes sense. And most people don't do that. If you find someone who thinks ahead, who can just sort of anticipate what you need before you ever articulate it, it makes all the difference in the world. The best example I know is a woman who worked alongside me as my assistant for years and years.
Yes, I love this story in the book, by the way. Love it.
Is it okay if I tell the story?
Yeah, please do.
So I had a fabulous assistant, and she had 3 kids in about 3 years. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, I probably need to raise these children. And so she left, and we had a brand new employee who was a friend of one of the people we'd hired that we love. And, I don't know what she can do. She can help out in the office, but she really likes our cause and what we're doing and the purpose at our work. Can we give her a try? Sure. So my assistant leaves, and this young woman's there. And I'm like, I need to do a search, because at the time I was doing a whole lot of searches. I was probably on 10 or 12 plane flights a week. I was trying to run a staff while I was running 3 airports and doing. So it was a pretty big job. And I said, can you man this desk while I'm doing the search for it? Sure. So this is back in the days before the iPad, if you can remember that far back, or if you were alive that far back, I guess I should say. And in those days, I don't know, do you remember the little stick you used to get to plug into your computer to get a 3G signal, and you could get your email, and like AT&T would sell them? It was almost like a mobile phone attachment to your
Vaguely,
computer.
yes.
Exactly. Long time ago. So I am maniacal about getting back to people, and it has been a big reason why we've had some good fortune in our business. I'm getting on a plane. I'm sitting in the seat I pick very particularly so that the flight attendant can't see me very easily, so I can keep my computer open just a little bit longer. Get a few more things done before I have to close it, because there's no Wi-Fi or anything on plane. A lead comes through and comes straight to my inbox, and it's in Spanish. I'm like, how cool is this? We're now international. So I messaged Bethany and said, can you take care of this? And when I land, we'll talk. Get up in the air, and it's not Spanish. I realize it's not. And then I don't know it well, but I knew enough to know this is Portuguese. And if you know Portuguese at all, the best probability is this is Brazil. And they're a little bit crabby when you mix up Spanish and Portuguese. So I land, and the minute I land and can turn on my phone, I call, please. Oh, wait, and she says to me, William, you know what? That wasn't Spanish. I'm like, oh, you knew that? I mean, I knew you knew some Spanish. She said, yeah. I said, well, how'd you figure that out? This is before iPads. Think back to technology, right? Not too far from dial-up modems.
Right.
And she said, well, I found this thing on a website that translates languages, which was a new idea. So I ran it through a translator. I figured out it's Portuguese. I'm like, cool. She said, now I hope I'm not in trouble. Okay. Why do you hope you're not in trouble? Well, I just went ahead and dealt with it. Okay. What'd you do? She said, well, after I read the translation, he was getting ready to speak to a bunch of pastors about succession. And I know that you've written on that. I know we have a book on that. And so I went through our blog and I searched, and I know I've only been here a week, but I found a white paper you wrote years ago on succession that seemed to be the kind of thing that he was looking for. So I ran it through the translator, got it in Portuguese. I went ahead and branded it. I saved it as a PDF. I didn't want him to be able to mess with it when it's your words, just make it an unalterable document. And I went ahead and sent it to him. I hope that's okay.
Hope that's okay. Rock star.
So here's something new. I'm no longer looking for an executive assistant. Will you please join me? And it wasn't, she's a smart lady, but it wasn't her smarts, and it wasn't her responsiveness. All those things were there. Mm-hmm. But it was her ability to think a shot or two ahead of what was in front of her.
Right.
And say, how do I get something done that will make things easier for him when he lands?
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, Hall of Fame
Yeah,
unicorn.
I love that. And here's the funny thing, William. I lived in Spain, so I still speak Spanish. I'm married to Costa Rican. That's how I got the name Cortez. Hablo español. I lived in Rio de Janeiro for 2 years, so I speak Portuguese. Huge difference between those two languages when you are writing them, especially. So anyway, let's let our listeners and viewers sort of think about how they might be able to become more of an anticipator while we take our last break here. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We are on the air with William Vanderbloemen, who has been leading the Vanderbloemen Search Group for 15 years, where they are regularly retained to identify the best talent for teams, manage succession planning, and consult on all issues regarding teams. We've been talking about a couple more of his habits. After the break, we're going to hit one more, and then I want to hear a story from him about someone who was radically transformed by learning these habits. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. As I mentioned in the last break, on the book that I just brought out here, which is The Great Revitalization, what I did for you is I created a 3-page assessment, put it on my website for you. That will allow you to determine the extent to which your culture is suited for today's meaning and purpose crowd. So you can find it at gusto-now.com. If you are now just joining us, my guest is William Vanderbloemen. He's the author of Be the Unicorn, 12 Data-Driven Habits That Separate the Best Leaders from the Rest. So the next one I want to talk about here, which again, we do talk about on this program quite a bit, is the self-aware. Please, can we find more the self-aware?
Yeah. I need to be more self-aware. I mean, you know, what's so interesting about the research and the reality of self-awareness, Elise, we asked the unicorns to force rank, like, what are you best out of these 12? What are you worst? The self-assessment of our unicorns showed that the unicorns believe that the weakest of their 12 habits is self-awareness. Okay. You turn around and survey 250,000 people that are normal people, and 93% of them said, I'm above average at self-awareness. So, you know, like, I don't have an applied math degree or anything, but 93% of a group is not above average. Sorry.
Right.
So on the one hand, it's a huge blind spot for most of us. On the other hand, the unicorns, who are actually pretty good at it, realize how much better they need to get at it.
Yeah.
And it's like when I was young and was at seminary at Princeton, and you have to go through all this assessment to see whether you can be a minister in the Presbyterian Church. Some of it's, you know, visit with psychologists, career counselors, this sort of thing. And I don't even remember which appointment I was at, but I had to take all these Myers-Briggs, Berkman, you know, all the batteries of tests, right? And the person came back and said, well, based on what you have done in these inventories, we think that you've got a lot of strengths here and here and here. And they went through, I mean, a lot of strengths. They were very flattering. And then they said, it does seem that you might have a hard time accepting criticism. And before I even thought, I just looked at the person and said, I do not.
Oh.
And I'm afraid that's where we all live to some extent. You know, and it's good to know that in the last 3-4 years, particularly, we're making the need for mental health more and more of a
Right.
stated thing, right?
Yes.
And not just mental health for people that are severely ill, but like, have you worked through your stuff?
Yeah.
Because we all have it, right? And again, not to go all religious, but I think most listeners probably know the old saying, why don't you get the log out of your own eye before you worry about the splinter in your friends? And that was Jesus talking. And I used to think that meant like, judge not lest you be judged, or, hey, everybody's got it bad. Don't pick on people, or a lot of different. What I didn't realize might have been behind that teaching is, until you work through your own stuff,
Yeah.
you're not going to be much help to others.
It's so true.
And
And one of
it's
oh,
just
go
hard work.
It is, and I'm really increasingly to that end, William. I have come that we all, the sooner that we can work through all of our past pains and torments and really step on the path toward healing, the more effective and connected we can be. And all of
Absolutely.
us have to do that. None of us are immune. We have to do it, and that's why some of the things you say in the book around the self-awareness habit that are so interesting and compelling to me is, you talk about why our managers love this one is because the less anyone has to tell you, the smoother things run. Right. So
That's
you
right.
have to come, if you have to come to somebody saying, look, you're overpowering people in meetings, you're not letting anybody talk. They already know that, or they're not doing it. It's just the better. And so there were so many pearls in this one that I just thought, one could harvest if we really put this stuff to work.
Well, I know I need to work on it. And the more I get in touch with my need for self-awareness, the more I realize, oh my gosh, I got a long way to go. But
Mhm.
that's probably a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm with you on that. And there's a couple other things that I just want to call that I think are really cool. One in particular, I love this one sentence zinger in your book, William. You say, self-awareness is a pact we make with ourselves to be better for others.
Mm-hmm.
That's so powerful. So powerful.
No, and my experience at least has been, if you spend your career trying to help others, you'll never run out of business.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You always be in demand. Well, speaking of that, the last one that I want to just briefly hit before I want to get that story from you is, and this is a really interesting. This is interesting one for it being a one of the 12 habits. The likable.
Yeah.
Be likable.
Yeah.
Practice being likable.
Yeah. With 3,000 completed searches under our belt, we were sitting around not too long ago with the consultants who've been with me the longest. And I was like, hey guys, it's one of those after dinner kind of sit around, chew the fat sort of thing. When it gets down to 2 finalists in a really big search, what do you think the big difference between the person who gets the job and the person who doesn't is? And there were 3 guys there, and all of them said some manifestation of this sentence. Oh, the one who plays well with others.
Yeah.
It's like, and as we head into a much more automated, efficient future with our new friend AI, the people who are likable will last. I have a friend who wrote an article for the New York Times some years back. It still gets Googled and read, and it's probably 12 years old. And the title of the article, you don't even need to read the article, you just hear the title. What do you do with the brilliant jerk?
I've met them over and over and over again.
They hit all their sales numbers and they walk all over people.
Yeah.
Now there are a few, like the airline pilot flying my plane. I really don't care if they're a jerk. Just get us landed safely, right?
Right.
But that may get automated. For the most part, the value that will last in the coming labor market is humans being good to other humans,
Yeah.
which computers cannot do. So, to me, the likable is one that is almost like a secret sauce. If you can get that down, you can get away with a whole lot.
Mm. You know what's so amazing about that, William? In many, many ways, that's what I do. Is I teach adults to be nicer, to be better to each other. It's really a lot of the work that I'm doing. It's crazy to me.
And then it's no wonder you're a success. Every one of these habits is how people treat one another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which really is the ball game between, you ever meet somebody within 5 minutes, you're like, this one's special. This one's different. Yeah. They're probably practicing the majority of these habits all at once, and you don't even realize it.
Yeah, one of the simple things you say in terms of cultivating this one is stop talking and listening more. I mean, that's so basic. How often? I know I've been out and had conversations with somebody's just ad nauseum, just spewing. Your eyes are literally glazing over, and they're still going, right?
I think we've all been there. And
Right.
it's time has never moved slower, except maybe in high school physics class. I mean, than when you're across the table from that.
I
So
know, exactly. So, okay, we're getting close to being running out of time, so I want to make sure and give you the chance here. I would love for you to conjure in that data bank memory of yours somewhere a story about someone that you've known or worked with who has cultivated one or more of these habits and realized some kind of major transformation in the process of having done so.
yeah, I would say maybe the first thing that comes to mind, okay, would be my wife
Mm,
learning a new level of agility. We were a blended family. She had 2 kids, um, and they were little when we got married. And all of a sudden, she's a mom of middle schoolers and a high
mm,
schooler.
wow.
And watching her force herself into learning new ways of stretching and growing and that sort of thing. I mean, frankly, it made the house work. And she'd get mad if I were giving her credit for these things, but I watched that firsthand, and it was a committed effort at learning agility, and it changed things. And in a year, maybe I come back on the show and give you 5 case studies of people who've gone through this or taken. We built I don't know if you know this, a software assessment tool where you can
Mm.
see how you measure up against the unicorns, against everybody else, and it give you a little bit of a development plan. So then in a year, we'll have all sorts of stories of people who are like, I worked on this, I got better, and now I'm irreplaceable at work.
I love that, William. Yes. Well, here's the thing. When I connect with my guests, what happens is now we're connected and you really can't get away from me. So you're kind of stuck with me. And when I am in Houston, I'm going to come knocking on your door. So just know I've already
Sure
given you
thing.
the warning.
Sure thing.
Okay. So here we are. This program is listened to by people around the world, William, who are really interested in being part of or helping to create organizations that allow them to be their best, grow into their best. They're led by inspirational leaders that lead them to their greatness. They are part of an organization that does something to better the world. What would you like to leave them with?
You're on the right track. The last of the 12 habits, and we put it last for a reason because I think it's the most important, is the people that really separate themselves from the field are the ones who are driven by a purpose.
Yeah.
And I think you look at successful people, they're all driven by a North Star. Some of their North Stars are not what I would call North. I'm going to make as much money as I can. And they're driven by it and they succeed and they make a big pile of money. I think the most successful people fix their eyes on a North Star and run toward that, and it separates them from the field. And I think the higher and more noble your North Star is, the more you'll get noticed, the more irreplaceable you'll be, and the more fulfillment you'll feel, wherever that works in your, faith or philosophy or that sort of thing. So I would just say to those listening today, you're already on the right track. You're already doing things that most people aren't. Just keep down that path. Go read the book and tell me what I can learn. I'd love to learn from you.
You are a delight, William. I'm so happy to have crossed paths with you, to have read your book cover to cover and gotten so much from it. Thank you for gracing us on Working on Purpose.
Thanks so much, Elise. Joy to be with you.
Wonderful to have you. Listeners, viewers, if you want to learn more about this amazing man, William Vanderbloemen, the work he and his team do at Vanderbloemen Search Group, or his book, Be the Unicorn, start by visiting, there's a couple sites you can go to. You can go to vanderbloemen.com. Let me spell that for you.
No. Here's the best thing. It's so messed up, you can misspell it 100 ways in Google, and you will get there.
Never mind, listeners and viewers, you're on your own. But
Just spell it however you want.
the other one that you can go to is theunicornbook.com. That's pretty amazing that you did that. All right. Last week, if you missed the live show, you can catch it on via recorded podcast. We were on the air with Zach Mercurio for a second time, this time talking about the business of mattering in the workplace. He helped us understand the components of how we register that we matter and the consequences of how its lack of being registered in culture and people's behavior. Very, very compelling. Very, very fascinating. Next week, we'll be on the air with David Penglaze from Australia, talking about his fascinating new book, living in the light of day, how to avoid the success trap, strive to be sorry, I missed the last of it. Strive to be your best and live a more meaningful, flourishing, and prosperous life. I've started this book, and it's compelling to see what he's put forth here as a possibility for all of us to live in this light and literally better the world because of it. It's fascinating. So see you there. And remember that work is one of the best adventures and means of realizing our potential and making the impact we crave. So let's work on purpose.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.